says it's okay. It's waiting. Okay, the link is a different link. The link is a different link. That's
Fuck.
okay. That's okay.
Is it?
Yeah, just a second. Just a second.
Yeah. Well, Duncan posted the link in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey everyone. I guess we're live. Ended up being a slightly different link than we thought. Good evening, Knut.
Good evening, Luke. I'm copying the link right now to spread it like.
Everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah, spread it like lockdown policies. Let's see here.
Perfect.
uh,
Perfect.
Monetary Maxis Group. Let's start there.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, it didn't copy it. Oh, yes. Bear with us for a couple of minutes. Ooh,
We'll get this down, everyone. Regardless, this is
the the very first episode of Bitcoin Infinity Live. Yes, we have done a live stream with Samson Mow before on Infinity Day 2 years ago, or 1.5 years ago, right?
yeah, something like that.
Uh, yeah, a 4 hour live stream. But other than that, we're noobs when it comes to live streaming. So I hope you have patience with us for being dorky and bad at this. But we thought like this was the right time to do it. We've been talking about me and Luke have been talking about this for a long time, doing a live show, and we thought this was the right moment because right now there is important shit happening in Bitcoin, and maybe the YouTube algorithm threw us out there for me saying shit within the first 2 minutes or something. Yeah, uh, hopefully people can find this anyway. So that's the main reason we wanted to do this, because we've been wanting to do a live show so we can be topical and discuss current events in Bitcoin uh, on the fly, which is hard when you record and edit pods and not release them when you don't release them for 4 weeks. It's kind of hard to be topical. But yeah, we're super happy today because we have one of our favorite recurring guests. Our bandmate Samson is going to join us soon, and he's had a lot of good takes on this whole core wars debate here. So we'll get into it soon here. I'm just gonna share this in a couple more places.
Perfect. And while you do that, yeah, I'll just add. So to everyone who is familiar with our show, the Bitcoin Infinity Show, we take a pretty strong stand on this stuff in terms of Bitcoin as money. That Bitcoin as money is the most important thing, and basically there are so many ways in which that is getting broken at the moment, and so this is our way of fighting back, taking a stand. We couldn't let this go one moment longer, and we've talked about doing a live show for quite some time, but now it's finally the time to do it here. So we'll have
Yeah,
Samson joining us soon. But Knut, did you want to start off with giving us a little bit of an overview of your take on this whole core wars op return
yeah.
uh, thing right now? Yeah,
There have been a whole bunch of great tweets back and forth about this whole thing and what's true and what's not. And I think it was Jimmy Song who said like the 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 that all issues in Bitcoin, or all debates in Bitcoin, are because of uh, ideological people not understanding technicalities, or b technical people don't understanding the ideological dilemmas. And I think none of us three, neither me or nor Luke nor Samson, are developers. Uh, we have some technical knowledge, all three of us, in different areas. Um, but me for sure, I'm much more of an ideologue and much more of a armchair philosopher. And I do know a couple of things about Austrian economics. I've written a book on praxeology, and I've done my homework for sure in the Austrian economics department. uh, and this is why why I'm taking such a strong stance in this, because just as when fiat money is broken, right? So right now, real estate, for instance, is being used as money. It's being used as a store of value, or as I prefer to say, a medium of exchange over time, meaning that real estate, when used as money, becomes a worse form of habitat for humans, because not very many humans can afford to buy these houses, since they're getting bought up by, oh, hey there, Samson.
Hey, I'm not too
Good.
late, right?
Just
No,
keep
no, no.
talking.
Good
Just keep
morning.
talking. Well, yeah. Hey, Samson. Good morning. No,
Good
you're
morning.
not late at all. Good to see you.
I'm in the midst of a rant here about money, so I'll finish that, and then we'll introduce you properly. All right.
Okay, let's do it.
So, as I was saying, when real estate is being used as money, or as a store of value, or as a medium of exchange over time, it becomes a worse uh, uh, housing thing, or habitat for humans, because billionaires buy up all the um, seafront real estate, for instance, in a place, somewhere in a country, and people get priced out of that market, and therefore can't afford to live anymore, or can't afford to own their own houses. But the same is true for money. When money has more use cases than just being a medium of exchange over time and space. So when money, for instance, gold has jewelry as one use case, and a handful of industrial use cases, and that actually makes gold a worse form of money. Mises wrote about this like 70 years ago already, because it messes up the price signal. And messing with the price signal is like the worst thing you can do to anything in economics. That's why socialism doesn't work, for instance, because they fuck up the price signals. That's the main reason. It's not an incentive reason, it's that the price signals don't work. The wrong things get produced, and resources are misallocated. So when Bitcoin, which is supposed to be like the best money we've got so far, and it still is, by the way, I firmly believe that Bitcoin will survive this, no question about it. But when it's being used for other purposes than just a medium of exchange over time and space, that is, when it's being used as a graffiti wall for various space monkey artists and scammers of all kinds, trying to sell you pictures, which is a weird thing to begin with, because like another thing Austrian economists can tell you is that intellectual property is bullshit. It's artificial, all of it. uh, if if I copy something, I don't steal it from you, we both benefit from having it, and this goes for everything that can be copied. uh, Bitcoin differs from this because you cannot really copy a Bitcoin private key in any practical sense. Like the only thing that makes you say that you own your Bitcoin, you don't actually own them. You just know that it's very improbable that someone else controls the same keys as you do. So for practical purposes, you can act as if you own them, but it's all probabilistic, and this is what makes Bitcoin such a strange beast. But what I do know, with my knowledge, is that any other use case than the pure monetary use case, which is exchanging for other goods and services, exchanging the sats for other goods and services, uh, and storing value over time, or exchanging with your future self. If it's being used for anything else, that will reduce its functionality as a medium of exchange. So that's where I'm coming from in this debate, and I'd like to welcome Samson to the show.
Thank you.
First of all, do you agree with that framing somewhat, Samson, or like do you have another
No,
viewpoint?
I totally agree. I think by and large, most of us on the other side, if there are sides, agree with that in principle. And it's the more, I guess, developer side that seems to not agree with this. And they think it's a purely technical issue where it's just cleaning up the code and making the code correct.
Yeah, and also like the seeing it from a mere technical perspective, it leaves out so much. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions in Bitcoin is that miners create Bitcoin. uh, Miners look for blocks. So the thing they're, if they're producing anything, they're producing block space, right? And we, the network, pay the miners with fees and subsidy, like the block reward. We allow them to give themselves newly minted Bitcoin in return for the service they provide for us, which is securing the network. So the node runners actually um, uh, make the Bitcoin happen or discover them, or however you want to frame that. And in turn, I would say that everyone on Earth influences this, because node runners don't operate in a vacuum. They are in other markets. They, every human being has a ton of incentives playing at all times. And that is why it is so crucial for Bitcoin to have core developers that are ethically aligned, or ethically aligned with what the rest of the network thinks. And I'm not gonna like bash them and say that they're not or something, because I think uh, that's wrong in a sense. I'm just saying that they're, if they can find ways of making small technical changes that they might not think have a big impact on people's behaviors, uh, they may ruin a lot of things. Like they can cause a lot of damage without even knowing. So yeah, what's your take on developers and all that?
That's a long question. Do you
Yeah,
want to
it's
go for like 3 hours or 4 hours?
no, okay,
Just
maybe
go,
we should,
Samson. Just
yeah,
go.
all right.
Well, okay, let's see where to start. There's just so much to go into. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're seeing today, and I think this is why a lot of Bitcoiners are frustrated, because it just seems like we're in bizarro world where the developers are going rogue. And Matthew Crider, kind of coined that phrase: "Are the core developers going rogue?" And I think this stems from the fact that they are kind of proceeding without general consensus. And when you point this out, they like to say, well, this is not a consensus rule change, it's a mempool policy or something. But it's just like we constantly are talking past each other because the developers maybe are low EQ or what, I don't know, but they can't seem to understand what the people are kind of trying to tell them. And when people communicate, they don't always communicate in perfectly technical terms, so they kind of disregard it. So when you say like there's no consensus on this, they go, well, it's not a consensus change. But the meaning is that nobody agrees to this. We're using consensus in the general sense, like sentiment. We don't agree to this change. And then there's like just a whole lot of weird stuff about people talking past each other. What's the other one? Um, it was Peter Todd and what's the other guy's name? Dario Sor. I can't remember his real name, but his handle on Twitter. It originally came up that Peter Todd was paid to open the PR originally, and then I posted, well,
Yeah.
a dev, I didn't want to name names, so I said a dev paid another dev to open a contentious PR, and then it was incorrect because it wasn't that guy Dario Sor that did it. It was Christopher Allen in 2023. So there's just so much information flooding through X right now and everywhere that yes, I incorrectly implied that it was this time, but it wasn't this time.
Well, was it a dev at all that paid? I mean, Peter Todd is a dev, but did a dev pay him, or was that what he was pointing out, that it wasn't a dev?
Well, see, that's another technicality. So you could say Christopher Allen is not a dev, but he definitely works on protocol stuff, right? And then the question is Peter Todd a dev? Because he mostly theorizes and he codes a little bit, but what quantifies a dev? It's another blurry line. But the point keeps getting missed. Like that guy Dariusor kept saying, well, you made it up and you lied. No, I didn't lie. Someone paid Peter to open it. And then if you want to kind of like zoom out and look at things from a 30,000 foot level, if you read what Locke was saying, that you don't get to have an opinion unless you're a developer or a maintainer, and you got to open a PR. It's not mailing list discussions or X discussions. None of this counts. Only GitHub. But then if you try to you know make it add up, well, you can also pay someone to open a PR and comment on your behalf. And that whole can of worms has not been addressed. It's just dismissed because I'm not correct that it was 2025 that someone paid someone. It was 2023. So, or that guy's not a developer, or something like that. And then Dario Orsor, like, he took a photo with Peter Todd, kind of joking about it, passing $1, saying, payment for services not rendered. But I think, again, they're missing the whole point, which is people are upset because this is a shit show. Like, everything that's going on is a massive clusterfuck, from the banning of grass-fed, the flagging of questioning motivations as abuse, to a lot of other things. But the issue here with the payment is lack of transparency. So Dario Orser was saying, I wanted Peter to have the glory, so I asked him to reopen it. But then you should probably disclose that you want to do it because you work at Chaincode and another maintainer also works at Chaincode, and there could be potentially bad optics of that happening. And maybe you have the best of intentions and you want to give Peter Todd the glory because he opened it originally, and originally he was paid to do it, not that he wanted it, and that should have been disclosed too. But there's just like a whole ladder of things that are bad and not disclosed and not very transparent and not very clear, that just seems to be hand waved away or memory hold or ignored. And that just contributes to the entire anger of everybody.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of arrogance that pisses people off more than the actual debate, because like there's so to lay this out a bit, like this is like the third big war in Bitcoin, right? First, it was the op return wars, where op return was first included or first implemented, and then it was the block size wars, and we can go on for hours about that. You played a big part in that, and now it's the what do we call these? Like the op size wars, maybe. Uh, it's something else. The
Op return
core wars.
returns.
Yeah, the return of the op return, the revenge of the op return. And the technical issue is like, so for a while there has been this debate of how big this op return should be, and Luke Dasher has started quite quite a while ago, I believe, like more than a year ago. Like this whole thing started in February 2023, the whole spam issue, right? So he released Knots, which is a alternative version of the Bitcoin software with a smaller op return size, so that most of the spam cannot fit in there. And then like like, I'm speaking to the best of my knowledge here, like the proposal that is on the table now is to drop the limit on that op return size completely. And those arguing for it, they say that this will actually reduce spam, or at least reduce UTXO set bloat, because storing a JPEG on chain will not require as many transactions as when the op return is like 83 kilobytes, which is what it is right now, if I got this right. Please point out in the chat if I get anything wrong here. So the but I think this, like from a technical perspective, that sounds true. Like if you increase the size so these spammers can put all their shit in one transaction instead of filling the entire block up with stuff, then that sounds like a good thing, right? But I suspect that Jevons paradox and the economic phenomena will take over here, and instead of just minting that one JPEG, they might mint a million JPEGs in a million different transactions. So I don't think it actually stops the problem. But this is where the debate is about, what the technical debate is about, and people are ping-ponging back and forth. But I think the core of this particular drama is like, first of all, when they blocked mechanic, or grass-fed, as you call them, from the discussions altogether, and also when they imply that they're going to just put this change into the code and just go on with it regardless of what people think. I think that triggered a much bigger contention. What's the word? A bigger thing amongst the
Yeah.
community.
And we haven't resolved that yet, right? And I commented on Gloria's post, saying, you guys should probably sort out a lot of internal things before anyone's writing more code, right? Because there was another debacle where they locked the PR, unlocked it to let someone add an ACK, locked it again. And then when there was an uproar because everyone's watching this, of course, people saw it, they deleted the ACK. Now, who did that? Now, there's zero accountability here. And I know why that's the case, because Bitcoin Core developers like to say, it's just a project that's nobody's in charge and all that. But that also degenerates when the same people that are writing the code get to manage everything too. And that problem is compounded by the fact that a lot of people working on this don't have real world experience, right? I'm not going to name names again, but if you look at some of the people working on this that are in quote unquote positions of authority or power, they're basically fresh graduates that kind of joined research divisions in companies or just joined Bitcoin development companies that purely fund Bitcoin development. They've never had to work a real job, deal with real world politics, and solve real world problems. It's all very academic, all very theoretical. And I think you see this play out in how things are. Like, there is no one saying, well, okay, so and so messed up, right? It's just stuff happened. Somehow this fuckery on the PR happened, but nobody's responsible. And it's a decentralized organization, and everyone just contributes, and things happen. But then who was it that actually banned grass fed? Who flagged the abuse comment? Was that one of the maintainers or somebody else? It's all very, very opaque. I think this is what pisses people off, that you're not giving us any answers. And then there's a whole other aspect of it, like the untransparent process of the PR itself, and then the debate on the spam, and then the general attitude where nobody knows anything, and you don't understand the code. Therefore, you should just trust us because you don't know anything.
Yeah, it's very it's very similar to COVID policy. Like trust the experts is the mantra coming from that camp. Uh, that like luckily for Bitcoiners, we have ways of like everything is voluntary and we can run whatever code we want on our computers. Knots is one alternative. It's this is it's also important to say that this is not a fork of Bitcoin in any shape or form. It's just a it's just changing your mempool basically, like what transactions you uh, are in your mempool. Like I think this is one of the may or may not be deliberate confusions about Bitcoin, is that there is such a thing as the mempool. I mean, every node theoretically has different can have different mempools. It can be economically unviable for you to have a mempool that is completely different from everyone else's, but but this whole notion of the mempool is slightly wrong, isn't it? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think they're trying to make it very uniform, and that's why this is being pushed. I believe some developers, maybe Gmax or others, have said, you don't want different mempools. But just to go back a little bit, I think I should point out, Knots is a fork, and there are many forks of Bitcoin. And it's important to differentiate that there are bad forks and okay forks, right? There's Libitcoin, there's B Core. There are non-hostile forks that follow consensus rules. And the reason why we don't like the idea of forks or it's kind of thought of as a bad thing, is because of the block size wars, when every fork was trying to kill Bitcoin and change things at a consensus level. So that I think forks are not necessarily bad. It's just if it's trying to attack the network or to follow the rules of the network.
But it's not creating a different chain completely, like the
Yeah,
Bcash hard fork did. So
correct.
it's not creating two different tokens. So like that's not where we are.
Yeah, because
And
it's in consensus.
yeah, and that's a thing to be avoided, right? And like we want to avoid that at all costs. Uh, a very interesting metric I saw is that the latest update to Core has less traction than than Knots does. So Knots is bigger for people upgrading their nodes. Uh, where you can say that Knots has like between 5 and 7% of all nodes are Knots nodes, and that may seem very small. but it's actually bigger than you think when you consider that it's bigger than the proposed upgrade from core. um, uh, because most nodes are just going to not change. They're just going to sit there and run, and the node owners won't do anything about them uh, unless they have to. I guess that's sort of uh,
I'm gonna pop
simplifies
back
that.
in. Give me a
Yeah.
second. I'm not actually using this mic, so give me a
All
sec.
right, all right, all right. Yes. Um, what do you say about that,
That's
Luke?
funny.
Like,
Oh
what
well.
are your thoughts?
Yeah, but well, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, this entire thing is just crazy, and there's a few things that we've talked about here. I mean, I think the framing of that it's a consensus fork versus a like the client is still in consensus, but it's I like the framing that it's a client fork, not a chain fork. That's I think that's important to distinguish. And then I think just another thing about all of this is that the actual technical change that is being proposed isn't this massive dramatic thing. It's not this gigantic change to how Bitcoin works. It absolutely could change the actions that spammers and scammers and whatever do on and with the chain. And this is I think what the technical purists seem to miss here. The devs that say that this is the change that needs to happen because if we don't, it's going to be worse. And they're throwing in things like, well, probably the spammers are going to use this method instead of floating the UTXO set. I mean, they're being they say they're technical while they assume somehow that people are going to follow the choice they are. They just don't understand that people don't work like that,
Well,
right?
it's an absolute certainty that they have no idea if it's going to work or not. If you read all the posts, you know, they're all like might, could. It's not like they're sure, and they can't be sure because they don't have anybody in mind. Like there was a thread from D++ talking about it, and they're rationalizing that it can be cheaper if you have less than 137 bytes of data to encode. It's cheaper to use op return. And I asked the question, well, who has less than 135 bytes that wants to use this thing? And then Rory Highside commented crickets. And it's true. Like there is nobody with less than 137 bytes that's going to use it. It's more expensive to use. The people that are spamming have said they're not going to use it, and that includes Citria and the ordinals guys. And the stamps guys don't want that because they don't want to be in the prunable data set, right? So there's actually nobody that's going to use this thing, and I don't think you can make changes to affect an end goal with just hopes and wishes. It should be designed in a way that makes sense if you have a certain goal. But the bigger question is, what is the goal for making this change? If you change something in Bitcoin, consensus rule, policy rule, it doesn't matter. You're changing something that is important to people. And if you don't think it's important, then go and read Twitter, right? Or X or whatever. But it is important to people. But what is the goal of changing that? Because I've seen the motivation was stated to be we don't want a fragmentation of mempools. But that's exactly what you're getting now with people running knots, right? And you can say that they don't understand the technology, but as a developer of a system, of a piece of software that has users, and ideally you want your users to use your software, or else that software is not used, right? You should try to have a goal that you're working towards. And it seems every single thing that the proponents of this change are pushing are actually going to just fragment the mempool and make everything worse. Nothing indicates that it's going to work, or people are going to accept the change, or they're just going to accept the rationale that you can't do anything about spam.
No, and I mean, the that whole notion of use cases is so weird to me. Like, what do you mean use cases? If this is money, like, I think most Bitcoin users want to be able to s- keep their wealth, know that there's no inflation, and to send and receive money. And that's basically it. You have some other stuff like multi-sigs and coin joins and stuff that uh, you can even argue that open timestamps is probably the least destructive arbitrary data thing you can do with But all the other stuff, it's mostly interesting to these companies that are making money off of it. Most of it is scams, like everything else in crypto. Like it's like people have sort of figured out that crypto is kind of dead now. Bitcoin is so much bigger than every other shitcoin out there. So now they have to take their shitcoinery here instead and do the same scams on Bitcoin. And it's such a, like, the word use case to me is so cringe. And when it comes to this stuff, there are so many people that when you follow the money and see who they're working for, or if they have what sponsors they have, or like uh you can follow the money and see that their incentives are always skewed towards quote unquote use cases.
Well, let me add something there. So there's a very marked shift in the discourse about Bitcoin development. If you listen to Moneyball's podcast, what's it called, PBJ, I listened to segments of it, and if you read the mailing list, and you look at the PR, there's just a change in how things are discussed now. And one of the biggest changes is they're actively factoring in external things like Citria and other things and what they need. And I think for a lot of us, the question is, why are developers of the Bitcoin protocol so considerate now about what other things need, especially VC funded companies, right? I mean, never in the past has anyone, in my recollection, talked actively about, I don't know, what Omni needs, right? Omni was a protocol linked to Bitcoin, right? OmniCoin. And then there's Counterparty. Nobody talks about what Counterparty needs. Why are you now talking about what Citria needs? Like, why is it factoring into this? And then, you know, to extend that, like, no one's ever thought about, well, what does Liquid need, or what does Rootstock need, or anything like that. Like, nobody considers that. It's like you're on your own. You have to make it work on your own, and, you know, good luck to you. But now it seems to be very different, very accommodating, and you just have to listen to what they're saying. And I've been pointing this out, like commenting on these things, and say, listen to what you're saying, because it's changed, and it's really weird that it's changed in this way. And that kind of leads to the next point, which is there's this sort of psyop going on, or gaslighting about a lot of different things. Like, you don't need what is it? You don't need to run a full node. A prune node is just good enough, because if you don't want to store data, you can just prune it. But you have to prune everything, and it's not just the op returns or the witness data or whatever. So it's like this discussion is changing, and they're also trying to change a lot of the terminology. And there's like a lot more. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's just you log on and you read stuff, and you're like, wow, am I on the same planet that I was on today? Like, what changed? Why is it this way now? And I think that is a sentiment a lot of people share.
Absolutely. I mean, pruning is so cringe to me. In 2017, pruning was one of those words that the Ethereans used. And you can run a half node and you can run a semi-pruned node and stuff like that. Uh, so uh, the way I see it, the cost of running a node is the most is the most crucial thing for Bitcoin to function. If that becomes too high, then it's not decentralized anymore, and then it's just another shitcoin. So if that particular domino falls, Bitcoin is failed. It's another shitcoin. It may still be valuable for another decade, but at the end of the day, it can be taken over if that happens. Like it's much more fragile. So pruning, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you fire up a new node, you need to download the entire blockchain, right? You need to download the data first and prune it afterwards.
Yeah.
So you still need the storage for the thing. And like this, to me, removing the limit in op return, if you have to download the entire thing, it sounds like maybe I'm stupid here, maybe there's something I'm not understanding here. But if I have to download like redux versions of the Star Wars prequels in op return the first time I try to sync the blockchain, then that is going to make my hard drive for the blockchain more costly. Am I right or wrong here? Or am I just naive?
You're right, but then we have the other, the counter argument from the pro removal side, which is you don't understand that that's bad, but the UTXO set bloating is worse because that has to be kept in memory in RAM. And that seems to be a constant talking point. Like, you, Knut, don't understand this. Like, yes, it's
Yeah,
bad. Bandwidth is bad, but this is worse. And this is why we're doing this. But then the point never is addressed. Like, why do we accept any of this shit? Right? Like, we know it's bad. We don't want stuff in op return. We also don't want the UTXO set to bloat. But the solution you've given is to let people stuff more into op return at 4x the cost, and no incentive whatsoever to do so other than the goodness of their own hearts, which, if that was the case, they wouldn't have done it in the first place. And you compound that with the fact that a lot of these external protocols have been built to stuff things into witness data, into the UTXO set. So how does that work exactly? It doesn't even work. It doesn't help. But I think this goes back to the whole point. Like, is spam something that we can address? Should we have an opposition to it, or just roll over and accept it? It's over. It's done. And let's just clean up the code to make it align mempool policy to what's being mined, right? That's the other common argument. And I think this is another big sticking point, which is a lot of people want to fight the fight. And I don't think it's wrong, but the tool set of core developers that want to remove it is limited because they themselves are limited. They haven't really explored other things, like do other things to incentivize behavior, right? You could make the dust limit higher so that people that are inscribing or stuffing the UTXO set are paying more. And I think there's this sort of a mental blocker. Maybe it's trauma from the Blocksize wars or whatever. I don't know. But nobody wants to work on a soft fork anymore. And it's not like they want to ossify either. They're working on other things, right? But they definitely are not pushing towards soft fork. And if you look at it, it's almost like Bitcoin Core has a culture of bike shedding. Like, everyone will comment on the op return thing because it's really harmless and technically it's a worthwhile discussion to have, right? But nobody, Gmax, Peter Woolley, they are not commenting on soft fork proposals. And I think a lot of it has to do with leftover trauma from the Blocksize war. And I think there's also additional stuff like unresolved issues from the Blocksize war too. If you look at this split today, it's a lot of people that pushed for the UASF and pushed for BIP 148 that are now saying we should fight the spam. And the other side that says roll over and accept it are the guys that kind of didn't push for 148, the ones that think, there's nothing we can do. So I think we have to work through that because we kind of allied ourselves and unified for that war. But when the war ended, we never really talked it out or did anything. Everyone was busy and everyone went on their own paths and, worked on their own projects or started their own companies or whatnot. But that's something we never really worked through. A lot of the developers of Bitcoin Core didn't support 148. They were okay with it and they signaled like, yeah, it's okay, we'll do it. But nobody pushed for it. And I think the entire Blocksize war may have traumatized people, so they don't want to ever push for a hard fork, because if you're an introverted coder, you don't really want to go out there and advocate for things, talk to companies, try to create consensus. But actually, that is very important to do. You're more likely to be comfortable at home, behind your keyboard, talking about the technical reasons to do something. And I think there's also more here too. Like, if you think of that, like, what is harder from the perspective of a core developer to offload a change that could improve the network to the people that are less confrontational? Then that's debatable. But from their standpoint, it's easier to just like ram it through to their users who are behind their keyboards too, than to figure out something I don't know, like boosting the dust limit and having to go and talk to mining pools and miners and the community and build consensus. I think that is more scary for a lot of developers to do. And if you look at the incentive structure too of you know the whole development process, it is not to go out there, put yourself out there and do something that fails. It's to comfortably manage, micromanage, nitpick the code base and work on things that score you brownie points to get another grant, right? There's no benefit to you going out there taking a risk saying, we're going to do something and I'm going to champion this and try to make something happen. But I think you could push it through right now. There is enough appetite. Like devs are saying, well, if you want to reduce spam, the filter is the fees. But it's really not, because you've done nothing to incentivize that, and people can't just pay arbitrarily. But I think people would pay more. And if you boosted the dust limit or made it dynamic based on the size of the UTO set in some way, then you could also probably convince mining pools and miners to go with it too, because that boosts their revenue. And it has the benefit of aligning all the incentives. Like as a mining pool, you get more fees. As a miner, you get more pay. And as a developer, you reduce the UTO set that you care so much about. And as a node runner, you get that too. And you're willing to pay more fees to crowd out the spammers. I think it's like a win-win-win. But nobody really wants to go out and do that. But I think that definitely should be the case. Like there are a lot of things that can be done. Adam Back has proposed extension blocks too, to just make a space just for the spam and garbage, and you could just discard those extension blocks if you don't want it. But again, nobody's working on that. No one's working on a proposal, and even if there was a proposal, nobody seems to be willing to go and put themselves out there and do the hard legwork, because it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like similar problem to in other aspects of academia. I mean, grant-funded academia has this problem a lot of times. Like the people are studying stuff, not necessarily because it's cutting edge or it's their passion, but just it keeps them comfortable in their little zone, and the peer review is uh, system is like limiting them uh, into their own boxes. And by the way, if I had a Satoshi for every time people have pointed out how little I know about the UTXO set bloat, I would bloat the UTXO set. That definitely. Um, so so let me think where we're going with this. Yeah. So how likely is it that the reason that no one is bringing this up, or that no one is suggesting stuff like this, is that they're actually being bribed or paid by that they have a stake in one of these companies making money off of scamming people with JPEGs and BRC20 tokens and whatnot?
I mean, who knows? You can't really know, but you should try to take every proposal, um, as a potentially adversarial thing that's being pushed to harm Bitcoin. And you should assume that there are motivations outside of altruistic behavior, because you can't really tell for sure. So we definitely know that there are people investing in these companies that would benefit. And the question is it trickling down? And we really have no idea. Like we have zero idea. And all the opaqueness about how everything's being operated does not help whatsoever. And I think there just has to be some serious discussion about how the repo is being run and who is doing what, and some policy. Like if you're a developer, you should disclose your funding source and who's asking you to do things, if this is your own PR or if it's someone else paying you to open the PR or push for a change. I think there should be some ethical standard here.
Yeah, absolutely. So how could that be implemented? What can we do to make that happen? Like what's the roadmap here for the normal pleb who just wants Bitcoin to be money? Like what can you do as a pleb?
Well, not that much. You can not run Bitcoin Core. You can not upgrade. right? A lot of people are not upgrading, and this is why you see knots overtaking 2.9, because usually everyone's lagging behind. They're not always on the latest version, and that's to be expected, and that is very normal. You could run knots, but knots has its own issues too, because it's not um, that big of a project with a large base of developers working on it and maintaining it. So, it is a bit of a problem, and I see the critique saying no one's being forced to do anything with the upper turn limit being removed, and it's not coercion. But in some ways, it is, because if you don't update, let's say in 3 years, maybe there's a critical vulnerability that needs to be patched, and you need to use knots at that point, or you have to, I don't know, pay some developer to remove the change and maintain a separate version, a separate fork of Bitcoin. But at some point you have to upgrade, because the software is alive, right? For all intents and purposes, you can't really ossify software. It needs to be patched and bugs have to be fixed. So there will be a point at which you have to either run it or find another way, and there is no other way right now. But fortunately, we're still years away from that being a necessity. Fingers crossed that there are no new vulnerabilities introduced. But yeah, it is a problem. And I think there's no real good solution today for fixing this, other than just using knots or another implementation.
So, what about just trying to educate people how to not be scammed? Is that a is that a fruitless endeavor that will like is that a forever job that will never pay off completely because will always be the next fool out there?
Well, not being scammed for what?
No,
For
into buying these bullshit tokens and JPEGs and whatnot. Like
Well, I think it'll fade away. It's not. Yeah. Oh, so the answer is yes. You just have to educate forever. There's always going to be a new scam. Um, but I think there's another point here that we should talk about too, which is the danger of making adjustments to short-term threats. So I think my original stance on the whole thing was just don't worry about the spam. I didn't champion Luke's cause, when ordinals first came out, because I thought these things will just run its course and it'll all disappear. And I think there's precedent for making changes a bit too hurriedly and without thinking through all the consequences. So if you go back to the block size wars again, we kind of gave in and increased the block size, and we could have just had SegWit without an overall block size increase, right? You could still have the SegWit discount, but maybe you have a quarter of the 1 megabyte plus 3/4 of the SegWit discount to get a total of 1 megabyte weight unit, right? So you could have done it without increasing overall block size. And I think every time we jump the gun and we make some change that we think that there is no harm in doing, there can be harm, right? Because right now the blocks are not full. Even with the spam, they're not full. So we already messed with the economics of Bitcoin by increasing the block size, even though it wasn't a hard fork. It was a soft fork, but we still changed something. And you could say, like, if we didn't do that, maybe when we had the drawdowns earlier, it would have been better for some of the miners, because there would have been more pressure for fees because the blocks would have been a bit smaller, right? So there's a lot of unknown things that happen when you make some small change. And I think it's the same for op return. It has not been really well evaluated, and there are concerns. Like Laurent MT, he how did he put it? It's like a suicide pact between both sides, because now you're just going to end up with less financial data, more un- unwanted data in op return, which crowds out normal transactions. And there's just been no answer to that whatsoever. But I think, again, it's one of those cases where it's probably an issue, and we're kind of like thinking, oh, it's not, because it can be done anyway. You can already bypass the op return limit. um it's like a weak thing. Like what was it, CSU Wildcat was saying, it's like a diaper made of fishnet, right? Like, yeah, it can be bypassed, but it could also be a line of defense, and it wasn't always a fishnet diaper. And this is another thing I want to make too. I'm kind of jumping around, but there was an erosion of these defenses when data carrier size the definition of data carrier size was changed. And then you had maintainers refusing PRs based off of that changed definition. So it's like all of the defenses against spam have been eroded gradually. And maybe we didn't pay attention back then, but Luke was sounding the alarm, and grass fed too. And everyone was like, yeah, it's okay. And I think it could have been okay, like circling way back around. If we didn't do that, the spam might have died off like everything dies off. There's a hype cycle and it goes away. But when you erode all of those defenses and then you keep on doing that with the removal of the op return limit, I think that changes things. And now we have to actually speak up and say this is wrong because, why are we here? Why is it not effective? Because we took actions before that have been making it less effective, and we didn't do anything also to combat it. So it's like a double whammy or triple whammy where we're at today. But yeah, like I think there has to be something done about it, and we just have to decide that something has to be done about it.
Yeah, there's. I've heard that argument from the other side that Luke and Mechanic are also incentivized by their motives because they have Ocean. Uh, to their defense, like Ocean is completely transparent with their payout, so they are at least transparent with what they're doing. So. And I have a slightly different memory of like the origins of this. So you're making the point that if Luke hadn't brought this up, then there would have been less spam because people wouldn't be as aware of it. Is
No,
that
no,
sort
no.
of?
I'm saying if we didn't
Uh,
mess with data carrier size and we took some steps, maybe it wouldn't have been an issue. But now it's definitely an issue.
yeah.
And removing the op return limit is sort of signaling that spam is welcome, right? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is the other gaslighting point, that Bitcoin is a database. That was
Oh
not
yeah. Yeah.
something that we talked about ever. And now it's like, hey, guess what? Bitcoin is a database. You can't stop data. But yeah, we can stop data. We can. And that's why op return limit was put in place in the first place, because it is a signal. And I think the developers are missing this key point, that signaling something is important, even if it's not 100% effective. You can have a sign that says no trespassing. Does that stop everyone from trespassing? No. But at least that there is a disposition. And I
Yeah.
think it goes back again to the whole dynamic of Bitcoin Core. Like Bitcoin Core can't have a roadmap. Bitcoin Core can't have an opinion on things, and it shouldn't have a stance on how a decentralized network can work. But if you do nothing, then eventually you don't have that decentralized network because it just becomes controlled by either core development or mining pools or miners or whatever. But it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We can't do anything because we shouldn't do anything, and okay, it's bad, and now we can't do anything because we shouldn't do anything. And it just goes on and on and on. So it is very much ideological. It is not technical whatsoever. And until we can resolve that, there's just no way to talk to each other on both quote unquote sides.
No, and I think the whole debate and the whole it being about sides in the first place, that thing is manufactured from the spammers side. Like so for instance, there were conferences and stuff where these taproot wizards were given a huge platform to talk about this, and as if it was a thing before it became a thing. Like that whole thing is sort of manufactured too, that we uh that this was a thing to be debated, because if there's one thing I know about shitcoiners is that they love attention. Like the more attention they can get, the more gullible fools they can find to sell their shit to. That has always been the case. So they of course like that there's a quote unquote war going on, and that people are discussing this. Then the other thing you said about this, I can't square this in my head, like that they say filters don't work, and at the same time they want to remove the limit. Like those two are, to me, are contradictory.
Well, from an absolute technical standpoint, they're correct that they don't work, right? But they do work at the same time because it discourages unwanted activity, right? And
Yeah, they
you,
work to some degree. They don't they are filters. They are not blockers. They're filters. Like they let some things through because they have
yeah,
to. Like it's a net, as you say.
yeah, it's just exhausting, all this garbage. But okay, you can say the filters don't work, but at the same time, like nobody on the other side, and I hate saying the other side because we're on the same side, but they're saying, it doesn't work. And then they say, here's why it doesn't work. Because they're sending these non-standard, and this is their word, non-standard transactions directly to mining pools. So you're saying they don't work because people are bypassing them. And yes, they can bypass them, but you can also do something about it. Right? And there are many levels of doing something about it, which we've outlined, right? So it's just a defeatist attitude. And I think this defeatist attitude is really dangerous for Bitcoin. If you go back again to the block size wars, I'm not saying this is a block size war. I hope it doesn't turn into anything like that. But if you thought about the attack from the big blockers back then, and you thought, well, there's nothing we can do about this, like Knut, Luke, Coinbase, Blockchain Info, Bitmain, they all want it. There's nothing we can do about it, right? Then we'd be sitting here with some Ethereum clone managed by Coinbase, right? That's how it would happen. You have to do something. And the whole point of Bitcoin is that you have agency and you can run your own node. And people are upset because they're being told how to run their own nodes. Like, yeah, just prune it, bro. Like, you don't need that. Like, no, like you can't tell anyone what to do. And is the problem. You have to be able to do something. Otherwise, Bitcoin is really meaningless. Like, I don't think people understood. Like, back in the block size war, from the mining pool side, the only thing that stood in the way of the big blockers just steamrolling everything was me at BTC China pool. We were like 18% of hash rate, 16 to 18% of hash rate. Me, Alex Petrov at Bitfury. I think there's something like 10 or something like that. And I think Slush Pool. And it comes down to like three of us that have influence over these three mining pools that we just said, no, forget this. We're not going to let you do this. But if it wasn't the three of us, then, it'd be like 100% of hash rate signaling for this thing, right? So you have to think that you can do something, and you absolutely can do something. Um, if you look at the situation right now, like, can we push a soft fork through? It's actually probably easier now to do so because a lot of the mining entities are public companies, or they're, based in jurisdictions where there is rule of law, and you can reach out to them. They have investor relations, they're on social media, they sponsor conferences. If a pool, and not naming names, is doing something bad for the network, there's a lot that you can do as a pleb. They might sponsor the news desk, the live news desk at a conference. You should walk in front of that news desk and say, stop spamming the network, or you should wear a t-shirt that says free mechanic or something, right? And you can jump on the investor relation calls and raise issues. There's so much you can do. There's the saying from Bruce Lee, be like water. If your opponent is bigger than you, use their weight against them, right? They're big, they're public, they're very visible. You can do a lot. um, George Bodine, he's like, contacting Bitwise, who's sponsoring a lot of these organizations, or donating to a lot of the organizations that are funding core development, and making his voice heard. There's just so much stuff that you can do today to push a change through. And if your change is reasonable, rational, aligns the incentives, there's no reason you cannot push a soft fork through for something like boosting the dust limit, right? And that's not even a consensus change. It's a standard. It's a policy thing.
Yeah, don't trust, verify is the TLDR of that, right? That's what Bitcoin was always about, and Bitcoin is like the most robust and the most fragile thing at the same time. It's only robust because we're robust, like as users, and yeah, as you say, you can do a lot of things. There was this great Matthew Cratter video the other day. I mean, he releases so many now in the midst of all this debacle, so hard to keep track of them. But there's one where he just says like, you can stop funding core devs if you're doing that via OpenSats or something. You can just turn off that faucet.
Yeah.
You can boycott conferences that platform these people.
No, I
You
said
can.
that. I
Oh,
said
you
those
said that.
things.
All
Yeah, I
right.
think
All
you
right.
might have
I
repeated
think
what I
I.
said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he said it too. And yeah. But you can watch podcasts. Stop watching podcasts that platform people that are on the wrong side of the war. You can do all sorts of things.
By the way, I
Mm.
got a lot of blowback from devs saying that you could defund devs, but I mean that is a reality. I'm not saying you should. I said you could if you don't agree with what they're doing, which I
Yeah.
think is valid. I'm not
Yeah.
saying go and do that. Like I'm not saying you should go and protest the mining pools, right? You can do that if you want, but you could.
Absolutely. What was the other thing I thought of? Yeah, miners. Like whenever I hear anyone in Bitcoin talk about what's good for miners or not, I'm like, yeah, but miners already have their like the difficulty adjustment works both ways, right? So if miners go out of business, the difficulty is lowered, and then people have a higher incentive to mine again after the 2 weeks, right? so so why should Bitcoin developers cater to miners at all? Why is that important? Isn't like node runners aren't node runners way more important than miners in general?
Like I said before, it's really weird that Bitcoin devs are just talking about what VC funded companies, Citrea needs, what people inscribing need, and what miners need, what's the best state of the mempool for the miners. But there's zero discussion about what the nodes and the users want, the people running the software. It just blows my mind. Like, if you look at some of the discussions, podcasts or writing otherwise, like, how many times have they talked about what the users want? Very few, if at all. But there's always concern about the companies. That just makes you question the whole ethics and structure of everything. It's just bizarro world.
It's clown world, and it's very much like politicians talking about bailing out banks and stuff instead of people's individual rights. Like it's always about this or that group. Uh, and yeah, it gives me the wrong vibes. Like why, if they're not paid by, or if they don't have an economic incentive to talk about miners if they were important, or uh, other big entities, exchanges or whatnot, then why cater to them at all? Why is that important? Why couldn't Bitcoin just be money and then let the companies solve company problems?
Because Bitcoin is a database now, apparently. uh, I mean, it's just like common sense has to come back. It's
No.
like I watched the panel at BTC in Austin, and people are saying, well, Peter Todd's open timestamps also puts data. Then is it spam? Like, no, it's not, because they're not abusing the network. They're not creating something to wreak havoc. It's using a little bit of data, but then you have different things out there that are obviously attacks, and they're very detrimental to the network. And I think the core developers don't seem to understand perverse external incentives. It is a thing that external to the protocol, external to the nodes and your code, there are a lot of things that people can do that are bad for the network. And you have to say those things are bad. You can't just say, yeah, it's just data. Like, it's all fair as long as they're paying a fee, because those things can crowd out financial transactions. And then there's the argument like, well, we can't know what is spam and what is not spam. Like, yeah, you can. You can know after the fact too, right? You can look at it and see, okay, it's a JPEG. Like, okay, what can we do about it? And if you guys are the smartest developers in the world, maybe you should put a little bit of effort into trying to fix it and not just Luke, right? It's just ridiculous that we have to depend on Luke for everything. And, and it's, again, going back to the block size war. You have to remember, Luke was the one that figured out how to do SegWit as a soft fork. Everyone said it was impossible and it's a hard fork, but he figured it out. So why do we need to depend on Luke all the time for everything? He's already worked his one miracle, right? And let him take a break and work on Ocean. But it'd be nice if other developers actually tried to do something, either in code or pushing a soft fork proposal out there, but something would be nice other than just laying down on your back and saying it's over, it's database.
No, I mean, Luke. I would say that Luke is the second most important person in Bitcoin ever after Satoshi. Like, uh, SegWit is without that, there's no Lightning Network, and without that as a soft fork, there are probably two coins and they're both shit. So, uh, yeah. By the way, this whole Bitcoin being a database, it reminds me of a debate in economics about the origins of money. If money started as commodity money or as credit money, so IOUs basically. And there are two different schools of thought here. And the Austrian school is that it was all commodities to begin with, because like you have to be owed something in order to, like, the commodity has to precede the credit. Something has to precede the credit, because you can't just loan out nothing. Uh, but the whole Chicago school and the banking version of this is that money is first and foremost a ledger, uh, which which sounds very much to me like Bitcoin is first and foremost a database. And it's not. Like, it's the without the value of the Satoshi, without the Satoshi being this precious thing that doesn't change in any meaningful way, there's nothing else. Like, it's the thing that makes it valuable.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting comparisons. Like you could look at the whole issue with the border, open closed borders, and illegal immigration, and apply it to this, right? Like I've seen arguments from the Democrat side. I'm not saying the core devs are Democrats, but actually a lot of them are from blue states. But maybe that's another topic for another pod. But
San
like,
Francisco.
yeah, they're saying, you know, one of the arguments was you can't turn away people at the border because they could be American, right? And it's the same thing. Like, yeah, like you can't turn away spam because it could be a legitimate transaction, but I think you can do things to fix it. But we've just been weakening our defenses all along, and we're just not willing to turn to common sense and go, yeah, that's spam. Or, you know, open timestamps is data, but it's not spam because it's not trying to blow everything up and increase your node size to the point where you can't run it.
Yeah, I like to run the thought experiment every once in a while. That imagine if this chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks wasn't in the Genesis block. So there was nothing but monetary data all along. Like that never this idea of putting other stuff on the Bitcoin blockchain never materialized for anyone. Like no one ever got the idea to put arbitrary data there in the first place. Uh like is that first inscription? I know it's not in op return wasn't a thing, and that's like uh
It's a
it's sort of
Coinbase.
it's
Coinbase.
a Coinbase. The data is in the actual Coinbase itself, right? So, uh, if that hadn't been there, had this idea of putting other shit on the time chain ever occurred to people? What do you think? Like, was that a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, if you can put data in, people will put data, right? And it goes to the other point from the developers, which is there are lots of ways to stick data in, right? If you have immutable database, right, or immutable ledger or whatever, people are going to try to stick stuff in there, right? It's just normal accepted behavior. But you know, op return was added, and it was added with a limit. So there is also a certain disposition that you should have towards data being stuck into the chain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we've covered a lot of topics here. Luke, am I forgetting anything here? Like, what are you thinking right now?
Well, just in hearing all of this, the only place my mind goes is really, I want to hammer home, why should people care? Why should people care about any of this? Why does it actually matter? And I mean, my short answer to my own question is that it's making Bitcoin less good at being money. Like, this is the thing that Bitcoin was supposed to solve, right? And people who are doing this, I mean, I wish it didn't look malicious. I wish it could just be ignorance, and it's just these technical people who want to do something interesting, right? But yeah, it's ultimately we're risking wrecking the only shot at fixing the money and therefore fixing the world, right? Like I don't know. I just don't get why people aren't like why everyone isn't totally up in arms about this, right? Like how can we get people to see what's going on?
Well, I think most people see what's going on. Like, it's a very small subset that seems to miss the point. And I think the point is just that technical versus ideological um, pit there. Like, people just can't get over it. Like, yeah, it's technically possible, therefore it's fine. And the other side is like, yeah, it's technically possible, but you have to take a stance on it. So it's a difficult divide because it's not technical; it's ideological. So they have to see things your way in order for them to make it across the other side or even understand it. But I think the step there that has to be taken is that the developers should listen. Like there was a thread on the mailing list where two people were talking about, how do we avoid people brigading the PR and making it hard for developers to do their job developing. And I sent a comment and they didn't let it through the mailing list filter, but I said, have you guys considered not pushing for contentious things? Like, read the room. Like, everyone is angry that their nodes are getting filled with spam, and you're talking about doing this. And yeah, technically it doesn't change anything, but it also changes everything. So just, read the room. It's like unbelievable that we are here today and dealing with all this stuff. And the accusation that Luke and Grassfed and Ocean are pushing this for marketing for their mining pool to get more miners, that's just ridiculous. That's just something that someone that has never built a company or business is probably thinking, because this is a huge distraction, a huge time sink, and probably a huge waste of time too. And if you're building something, you know that you have real work to do. And coming out to talk about these things and record a podcast about it, it takes time from real work, and it takes time for me too to do this. Like, I've been also accused, like, Samson just wants to get into this for clout. Like, no, I have a ton of craft to do, and I'm taking time out of my day every day now, because I'm realizing that this is something that we have to deal with it. Like, when this first came out, I think I was in Japan, and I landed at night, and the next day, like, my team booked meetings from 8 a.m. and I was like so tired, and the whole 2 days, like, every day started at 8 and it ran till late. And like, people are messaging me say, hey, you see this stuff happening with op return, like, what do you think about it? I'm like, I don't know, I haven't read anything about it for a while, so I had to like go and dig into it, and it takes time. Like, it is a distraction, and hopefully we can get past it and figure out something that lets us go about our days and build things again. But yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this idea for a while, and maybe it is time that there is another fork of Bitcoin, like, not an evil fork, but a good fork, like Knots or Libitcoin. And it provides a different way forward, because we've talked about a lot of the problems and the misalignment of incentives with the Bitcoin Core repo right now. But it's difficult to change things. So I think, who was it again? Our former our bandmate, Michael Anton Fisher.
Oh
He
yeah.
pinged me and Giacomo the other day, and he was saying, like, well, can we change something else that's not GitHub? And he posted a link to something, I forgot the name of it, starts with an R, but it was something, I skimmed it very briefly. It's like a DAO, and there's like a token involved, but it was like a GitHub but not centralized. It runs over Tor and what was it, nim mixnet. But that something like that could be interesting. But I think he was saying, can we get Bitcoin Core to move over there? And I don't think it's possible, because, again, the alignment of incentives is too powerful. A lot of people are working on GitHub, and they don't want to move to something else because GitHub actually gives them clout, right? Like, you get your commits and you get your history, and it shows what you've done, and that will allow them to go from getting a grant to getting a nice job somewhere. So I don't think you can really make them move. There's too much history there that binds people to that. But you can make a new one. And I think if there is enough will from the plebs, the community, we can make it happen. And I'm happy to start it. Like, I don't know if you remember, but the bit 148 code that was written by Shaolin Fry after me, Alistair Milne, and I forgot the name of the other guy. I should remember, from Denarium. We posted a bounty to get the code written, and yeah, then we got the code. But you can fund a new repo. I think you can structure it in a way that, there is like a foundation, a board, and the board can veto changes in this repo, and you can start over from scratch. Just fork Bitcoin at 2.9, launch a campaign, get plebs to fund it. I talked to the guys at Geyser Fund, and they're saying it's super easy to set this up, and we could do that. And we can give grants to developers to work on this fork and maintain the fork. So if there is economic power saying Bitcoin is money, then this is how you could show it. You could finance the development of a new fork of Bitcoin with a better charter and a better overall structure. So you can put it on not GitHub, not Microsoft. You can find a new place to discuss things, not a Google Groups mailing list. I mean, where are we today? We're using Microsoft and Google stuff to build Bitcoin. It's just kind of weird, and maybe it's just the cypherpunk in me thinking that. But I think we could do a bit better. I'm not a huge fan of Nostr. If it has to be discussed on Nostr, sure, but I think you could find something better. Maybe something built on Hole Punch or Keat. But yeah, you could restructure the whole thing and start it out with a different set of incentives. So maybe this is another topic I've talked about in the past, but maybe you make it so you encourage everyone to develop as a NIM synonymously, as Satoshi did, right? So you don't go in there and you say, I'm Knut and, this is me. You just pick a NIM and use it. Ideally, it's not a NIM that someone else is using, but then all the devs in there are not for personal glory or recognition, but they are there to work on Bitcoin and toil in obscurity like Satoshi. And that should be encouraged. And then you give grants to these people that can work on it. It's probably better for them too that they're not known, because developers can be targeted, right? So you can start fresh, do it all in a nice way, have a charter for this new Bitcoin that it's focused on stability, conservatism, and working on consensus-driven soft fork proposals, because I don't see that happening in the core repo. So I think you can start over and make it better. And I don't know if there's appetite for that, but if there was any time at all that there would be appetite for something like this, it's probably now, given all the discontentment and frustration with the current going-ons. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that making people code for you, that was vibe coding before AI, like vibe coding with real stupidity instead of artificial intelligence, I guess. And yeah, did you notice the UASF bull here behind me has the laser eyes on today?
Yeah.
To honor your presence, and thank you very much for giving up some of your precious time for us dorks over here. It's super good that we got to do this.
Samson,
Shall we?
was that an announcement though? Was that an announcement? Are we gonna
Yeah.
actually do this?
It's an announcement of announcement. So maybe I'll post something too, but you guys can retweet it. Like, if there is demand, let's raise some capital and show that Bitcoin is money. It's not a database, and start a new fork and define these new criteria. Like, it's a new repo. We have to find something that's not GitHub and use something that's not a Google group mailing list, and encourage developers to come and contribute. And I think the anonymity part is really important, because there's so much drama tied to everything, because there are a lot of interesting personalities in Bitcoin development, right? Like people that have strong views on religion, or have talked
Beard.
about
Yeah.
genocide or whatever, right? Like, let's take away all of that and just focus on developing something for the users, and that's it. Like a Bitcoin implementation that you would want to run. Like, Knots is great and all, I think, but I think it's also politicized because it's Luke, right? And you can add more developers to it, but it doesn't change that it's really Luke's baby. But maybe another one with a foundation, a board, and anonymous developers with a charter could be better. And you could have knots too, right? There's no reason why multiple implementations that are following the same consensus rule and are not hostile is a bad thing. And in fact, maybe it's even strengthening the development ecosystem, because some developers that don't want to work on core can work on this, and they could do so anonymously and no one will know, and they can work on both. But it would be a place where ideas matter more, and that a pleb doesn't get overruled because he's a pleb. You can talk and say, I don't want you to remove this, and you're not going to be dismissed because of some cyclical logical argument that ideas with the best merit are evaluated only, and we evaluate the ideas.
Hey,
Yeah,
Samson, this is an absolutely fantastic idea here. Sorry, Knut,
yeah, I see
whatever
in
you
the
have.
comments here that Jack has a 10 Bitcoin bounty for someone to design a decentralized alternative to GitHub. Did you see that? Like, do you know about this? Any
No,
any
but
of you? Like,
there is one, but it's got a DAO and a token.
yeah,
So
yeah, I heard that, and that's like, let's not do that one.
yeah, or maybe we fork it. We'll see.
Yeah, or spork it. Uh, anyway, what else have you been up to lately? And what, like, we were hoping for an Omega candle during this show, but apparently not. But we're still doing pretty well here at the 101. So, what what have you been up to lately? And what's the price prediction here when we will see the Omega candle?
I mean, why do we care about price? Bitcoin's a database. I don't know. I think Omega Candle's long overdue, and it's just I'm just always in shock. I wake up and we're not at 200, because it's ridiculous that we're trading this low when there's this much demand for ETFs, financial products, and there are more and more microstrategies popping up every single day. And yeah, in terms of what we're working on at Gen 3, we're still working on Aqua. I think we're so close to the Dolphin card release. And just a note, when we release, it's going to be the Dolphin card will be in beta. So 50 people will have it first, and then we'll open up to more like over the next week or so. But it won't be out for everyone on day one, because we want to make sure it works. But yeah, we've been working hard on that release. And again, this kind of stuff, like debating about op return, all and trying to counter the gaslighting, it takes away time from that. On the nation state side, we had a lot of meetings in Japan. I also stopped by in Taiwan to meet one of the legislators there, JC Ko, and he is now advocating hard for a Taiwanese Bitcoin strategic reserve. So a lot of things are happening, and in Japan, there's also plans to establish a task force with a number of Bitcoin companies there to further push Bitcoin adoption. And I had one of my contacts in Korea just ping me yesterday and said, it's almost time to come to Korea because the new election is happening in June. So there's a ton of stuff happening in terms of Bitcoin adoption, and I'm super bullish, almost as bullish as the bull in your background.
Yeah, good to hear. I mean, so are we. Like, this whole episode might seem a bit doom and gloomy, and this whole debate may seem a bit doom and gloomy. But Bitcoin has had debacles before. We've always won. Sanity has won over insanity every time, and I think it will do so this time too. So just sit tight. Like the TLDR. I think this was also Matthew Cratter. Like TLDR is like, is are my bitcoins in danger? Like the short answer is no. Sit tight, take control of your own private keys, and that's it. Like get a hardware wallet or something, and just don't do anything for now.
Yeah, I just want to add too. It's important that we don't lose sight that we are Bitcoiners, even though It doesn't feel like it at some point, but and also some people have said, Bitcoiners are the worst. I'm not going to name names, but someone has said that. But we are all Bitcoiners, and we want what's best for Bitcoin. What we think is best for Bitcoin does not always agree, and there are always problems. But it's important not to lose sight of that and get mired in sides and attacking each other and everything like that, because at the end of the day, like, if you look back on all this 10, 20 years later, it's not going to matter. Bitcoin will be successful and all of these things will be worked out, and we have more in common with each other, whether we disagree or agree on op return, than with most other people in the world. So just keep that perspective and don't get too angry at people like Lop when they are disparaging of your views or anything like that, or whatever else, or whoever else says things.
No, this is one of the things about a leaderless system. It's always going to be chaotic. Like it's not going to be like a political discussion or a discussion within a company because there are no leaders. We're just all doing our things here, and it's completely voluntary, all of it. So it's bound to be chaotic. But that's also part of the beauty of it, and I sure as hell am enjoying the ride.
Hey, have we reached a natural lull here? I think we've said most of the things that needed to be said, right, Samson? And I don't know. Do you see any like short term changes or resolution here, or are we just taking this thing out to fork Bitcoin and I don't know,
Well,
make our own fork with blackjack and hookers or whatever it is?
there's no immediate danger, like Matthew Crowder is saying, right? Your Bitcoins are safe. Nothing's gonna happen bad tomorrow. The new version with op return is not removed, but you can run knots, you can not upgrade. These are all viable paths. You're not forced yet to upgrade. You One day you will have to upgrade to something for security reasons, but for now, we're fine. And if there is demand for another fork of Bitcoin with a clear charter, then let's make it. I think we have all the time in the world. We are winning.
We are winning. Hey, I can't think of a better place to leave off for tonight because let's not be totally doom and gloom about it, as Knut said. But hey, it's still a fight worth fighting, right? Bitcoin is money, and that's important.
Uh, One final thought I had here about the whole technical stuff, just while brain is still on. Uh, is it possible to make any change to Bitcoin without any economic impact, like any decision, human decision making impact? Is it even possible to make a change without it affecting anyone economically in any way?
Maybe bug fixes, but yeah, there are a lot of unknown implications of things that we can't always tell, but we should try to analyze. And maybe this is an area where AI can factor in. Like, you can use AI to analyze how this piece of code is going to impact other things, or how it will impact like behavior of this system, Bitcoin, outside of the code base, like how it'll impact the mining pools and everything else that's extraneous to the code itself. But you know,
Yeah.
AI is changing a lot of stuff. Like, we've actually integrated AI into the dev process at Gen 3 a lot over the last 2 months, and we're still R&Ding a ton of stuff. But it's changing a lot of things, and I think it can improve Bitcoin development a lot.
Yeah, I think still think there's a danger there though in making like economic decisions based on empirical data. There's always something dangerous there because you never know how people are going to react in the future. It's not an exact science. I mean, you still have to do your best, so use the tools that are available, I guess. Uh, yeah, is this where we wrap it up,
Yeah.
Luke? Is there anywhere you want to send our listeners something like how, you had all the signups for the new Dolphin card, I guess, already. There's not a chance for people to get their hands on one of those anytime soon, I guess.
No, it'll be soon. It'll be soon. Like we'll open it up to more people within a week, I would say.
All right, so keep your eyes peeled, I guess. Samson, thank you very much once again for coming here and discussing this stuff with us. Looking forward to seeing you in Prague, right?
Yeah,
Um,
maybe Vegas too. We'll
uh,
see.
yeah. Oh, we're not going to Vegas.
Oh, you're not going?
Are you gonna
Okay.
No, no.
kidnap us, Samson?
uh, for reasons discussed in this episode mostly. Uh, so, but we are maybe doing something live in Prague. Who knows?
Maybe. Well, I'll see you in Prague for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Take care,
Thanks,
man.
guys. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Awesome, Samson. Thanks a lot. This has been the Bitcoin Infinity inaugural live show, and thank you, Samson, for joining us for that. By the way, we're gonna try and keep this up. This is gonna be a thing, but you're first, so thanks for joining us for that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And thank you all for listening and joining in on the chat. So this is it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.